The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
This is Peter Towers, the CEO of ESS BIZTOOLS. We're just waiting for a few more people who have registered to come online, so we'll be ready to start very shortly. If you have any questions during this presentation, can you type the questions in, raise your hand, and my assistant will pass them across to me, and I'll do my best to answer the questions, if not get you the answer later on. Okay, well, it's 12 o'clock, so I think we'd better start. You're busy people. Thank you very much for participating in this special webinar today to look at the federal government's and various state governments' response to the recent floods and other weather conditions all around Australia. We're running this webinar from Townsville, and I can assure you we're very conscious of some of the issues today, because there's a massive cyclone bearing down on the North Queensland coast as we speak. It's not going to hit us today, but I don't think we'll be here tomorrow. It'll probably be too difficult for everyone to get to work. So doesn't mean they're going to disappear, I hope. Yeah, well, my staff's having a go at me now and saying they're going to be around physically, but they just might not be here. So we'll just get started in a moment. So for those of you who have just joined us now, this is Peter Towers, CEO of ESS BIZTOOLS. Welcome to this special webinar presented by ESS BIZTOOLS on the federal government and state government grants and loans that have been introduced for small businesses and primary producers following the recent wave of natural disasters around Australia. We take this opportunity to record our sincere condolences to the families and friends of persons who have perished as a result of these disasters, and to each of those persons and to everyone else who's been affected by these floods and other natural disasters that have occurred around Australia over the last 3 months. We extend our best wishes and prayers to everyone who's been affected. The first area we want to start this afternoon is what assistance the government's offering. And I'll just repeat what I said a moment ago, and some of you hadn't registered on at that stage. If you have any questions, can you please type them in, raise your hand, and my assistants will pass them on to me, and we'll do our utmost to try to answer them today. What I intend to do is just to run through the various packages that are being offered. ESS BIZTOOLS has produced 17 new papers, sets of PowerPoint slides, and 16 new checklists over the last week to try to cover the various grants and loans that have been introduced around Australia. This is an ever-changing space at present. In the last week, the federal government's announced that these grants are not going to be subject to income tax, and neither is the disaster income recovery subsidy. So there's things happening all the time. So what we're going to talk about this afternoon is disaster income recovery subsidy, grants for eligible businesses and primary producers, and the loans that are available. The disaster income recovery subsidy is available to people who are unable to earn their normal income. The dates are important: 29th of November, continued into January 2011, and I wouldn't be surprised if those dates now get changed into February. This particular subsidy is for affected persons in declared areas in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia and Western Australia. And what we're concentrating on in the material we've written, because our material is targeted at small businesses, is obviously small business operators or farmers. I've already said that. We've listed in the paper how much eligible applicants can receive. It's pretty close to $500 per fortnight, but it varies, of course, depending on the number of dependents. And as I indicated just a moment ago, the Assistant Treasurer announced a few days ago that this subsidy will be tax exempt. The applications have to be made through Centrelink. It's for payments over a 13-week period, and payments commenced last week. Doesn't mean one of your clients has missed out, but they could have got it from last week. They need to supply their proof of birth or proof of arrival in Australia, and a small business and a farmer will also need to supply some other information to prove that there has been an income drop caused through these natural disasters. And this type of information that will need to be produced is bank statements, business activity statements, income tax returns. All of that information does not have to be produced when the client registers. They have until the 28th of February to supply that information to Centrelink, and applications can be lodged up to the 28th of February. That date may also move because of unfolding disasters, both in Queensland and Victoria in particular. There's no assets tests, but the New Start allowances for income tests will apply, and in the paper we've detailed that allowance. The next area I want to move to is small business grants. One of the key issues is that these grants are not intended to compensate for loss of income suffered as a result of the flood or indeed any other natural disasters. The small business grants vary slightly from state to state. It's the same federal government program, but as I understand the federal-state relationships, there can be some variations, and there are variations between what is being offered by the various states. Another very important point, though, is that the grants are only available on a net amount basis, so any insurance recoveries need to be deducted. And it's generally to cover costs associated with cleaning and restoring business activities. The maximum amount of any of these schemes anywhere in Australia is $25,000, and they're available in Queensland and Western Australia. But as far as we can tell, in New South Wales and Victoria, the grants are still only $15,000. And based on the Assistant Treasurer's announcement of a few days ago, these grants are now being treated as tax-exempt payments. The definition of eligible small business slightly varies. The one we're stating here is the Queensland definition. So those of you in other states, and I know we've got people from all around Australia listening to this webinar, please check very closely what we've put into the paper for the eligibility of a small business. But generally, you have to have an Australian business number. Generally, in all of the schemes, a small business has to have less than 20 equivalent full-time employees, and the business must be owned and operated as a small business. There are rules on what percentage of your income. Generally, an applicant has to be earning in excess of 50% of his or her income from operating of a small business. That does vary from state to state, and it is detailed in the papers. The applicant small business must be domiciled in a declared disaster event area, and these areas have been declared, and in the addendum to the various papers for each of the states, we have listed the declared disaster areas. We will be updating those on a weekly basis as these floods and cyclones continue to appear around Australia, because I suppose there is every likelihood that some of those declared areas will expand. And the other key thing that's applicable in every state is the applicant must have been engaged in conducting the small business when affected by the disaster. Generally, you have 6 months to lodge the application. What I'm now going to show you is a paper which happens to be the Queensland one, and this is the paper that ESS BIZTOOLS has produced. We have quite a number of guests participating in this webinar today, because we are making this material available free to every accounting firm in Australia. You are welcome to place your name and contact details at the top of the page where I'm indicating at present. That's why that space is there. So you can brand it as your own material. You can edit the material if you wish, but then you're responsible for it. In actual practice, we understand that most of our subscribers never edit any of our material, but that is your choice. We have a list of contents, and we have the addendum that I was referring to a moment ago, which lists the declared local government areas in Queensland. These papers are written, targeted at your small business. So a firm that's been used to dealing with our material as a subscriber would normally badge these papers and send them to the small businesses or farmers when we get to the farming ones that they think this grant may apply to. Obviously, if you want further information, you can go onto the government's website. They're not the easiest things to read. You have to chop around from various sites to get all the information. So we have tried to summarise it here in one paper. In Queensland, there is a financial hardship category that doesn't appear to be applicable in the other states. So that in Queensland, if your client does not have the $25,000 to spend, they can put a submission to the QRAA, which is the responsible authority in Queensland, and they will advise them whether they will accept a supplier's, contractor's invoices being sent to them for payment. We've talked about eligibility of small business. The key thing is the 20 equivalent full-time employees. They must be operating a small business, and obviously they must be located, or the business must be located within a declared disaster area. The ineligible small businesses slightly vary from state to state. charitable businesses are not included in these grants. There are some grants that some of the states have made available to charities, but we haven't covered them in this paper. Obviously, there are some terms and conditions. Generally, in the $25,000 grants, which is for Queensland and Western Australia, the first $5,000 is basically available if the business was located in the disaster area and they were operating a small business. We have a question, so we just might look at that. Yep.
Does this cover small businesses that operate through a family trust?
The question is, does the grants cover a small business that operates through a family trust, as long as it's a legitimate family trust in inverted commas, so there's no major entity, public company involved? I would consider it would, in the spirit of how these rules have been written, although I cannot recall actually seeing the words family trust in any of the government's websites. If that inquirer is from Queensland, I'd suggest you contact QRAA and ask them. But if it's just a normal family discretionary trust operating a small business, I wouldn't see any problem with being able to make a claim. There's another question now. We might just take that.
Our client has a teaching business that has been doing consulting to supplement. Has extensive damage to farms. The last financial year, comms income was $100,000 versus TP income $50,000. So when it passed eligibility test, is it worth applying or not? They wouldn't hurt me for
The question goes on a bit. It's basically, in fact, I think I'll get my assistant just to write that out for me so I can read it back to you and give you the answer. So we just might keep on going. We'll come back to that question. It seems to be bringing in an income figure for the small business. As far as I can see, there's no income eligibility. The eligibility is built around employees. If in Queensland you're operating what the government is calling an eligible separate business, and as long as it's a bona fide separate business, you could lodge a second grant application for a further $25,000. I have not seen that included in the legislation for other states. In Queensland, they've introduced this concept of a suitably qualified person, which is an accountant who can sign off that an applicant is in financial difficulties, because the QRAA require that statement to say an applicant is in financial difficulties. So that's basically the Queensland grants. As I said, they're slightly different in the other states, and what you have on the screen at present is a list of the declared areas in Queensland who are subject to these grants. We have also produced PowerPoint slides if you wish to conduct a seminar or even run your own webinar for your clients. These are in the package that's available to everyone free of charge, and obviously are available to our normal member subscribers. So I'm just going to go through these. You can use them. You can place your logos on them if you wish, as a means of informing people that how these schemes work. And obviously the PowerPoint slides that I'm going through at present are based on the Queensland grant. So in the Queensland grant, it has to be lodged by the 30th of September 2011. If you're, just a minute, I've just gone too far ahead here. I want to now show you the checklist that we've prepared. There's a checklist for each state's grant, which is trying to give an accounting firm a basis for submitting an application for a client. Each of these grants do include a general warning that there will be post-grant audits conducted. So we've tried to design a checklist that's suitable for each of the grants that would enable you to have your staff go through and verify that your client is eligible, and to retain sufficient information together with the client's information and photographs to support an application if you're subject to an audit, or the client's subject to an audit. So this is a form. It's not linked to a computer program. We'll be developing that later, but that's the subject of another webinar, because we are developing a full program on government grants for accountants to use in Australia, which will have material that is very reactive and able to supply answers. This is a form which we just suggest you might use, and to guide you and your team in basically deciding whether a client is going to meet the eligibility requirements and satisfy what the various government agencies are looking for. Incidentally, we are going to place these PowerPoint slides that we've used for this webinar onto our website in the next 24 hours, subject to cyclone interference in North Queensland, because that's where we're based, and you'll be able to access those free of charge, and that applies to both our guests and our normal member subscribers. So hopefully the checklist will assist in you being able to prepare an application for a client. The checklists are available on ESS BIZTOOls website for our member subscribers, just in a separate log-on area, but in the section index it includes details of the checklist, so you'll be able to go to there.
Welcome to GoToWebinar. Welcome to GoToWebinar. Web events made easy.
ESSBizTools.com.au, and Maya will send you the checklist. Please indicate which state you want to receive a checklist for. I know some of you will be acting for clients in various states, so you can nominate which states you require them for if you require more than one. The next area I wish to move to is small business loans. In conjunction with the federal government, the various state governments have introduced disaster loans, and in some cases assistance on subsidy on interest payments on loans, specifically for expenditure incurred post these disasters. The loans vary. The maximum is $250,000 in Queensland. There's loans of $130,000 and $200,000 in some of the other states. These loans are only available for small businesses which have been significantly damaged by an eligible natural disaster. In Queensland, they're only available if you're unable to obtain commercial finance, but otherwise have sound prospects of long-term viability. And the loans are not intended to compensate for loss of income. And those are the general rules that do apply in the other states. Insurance recoveries have to be deducted. The requirements of an eligible small business are a little different to the grants. Again, it mentions sole owner, partnership or proprietary company. I was asked a question before about discretionary trusts. Discretionary trusts are not mentioned, but I think if you were able to explain to QRAA in Queensland's case that it is a normal family trust, that should be okay. You need to demonstrate that the applicant has used up all of their available liquid assets and normal credit sources. So these loans are just not there available for small businesses the way some of the politicians have been saying. There are some real hoops to be negotiated. And in some of the states, primarily in the Queensland one, there's a rule there which says the applicant has to demonstrate they've taken reasonable precautions to avoid or minimise loss or damage from the disaster. And also that there's reasonable prospects of re-establishing the business on a viable basis. So there's some real judgment questions there that have to be answered. The terms of the loan vary in the various states from 5 years to 10 years. And the other very important issue that's not been talked about by any of the government ministers is that security has to be supplied. Now, there is a separate paper for each of the grants, so we'll just click onto that. And you have a paper in the same sort of format as what the grant one was, so it spells out exactly how this loan will apply, and this one here is the Queensland one. Time is moving on, so I'm not going to go through that, but it's there if you wish. There is also the PowerPoint slides, and there is also the checklist, which I will briefly go to. So this is the checklist for a loan of up to $250,000 that's available in Queensland. And again, we've tried to put yes, no questions, and if we think they've answered no and there's no chance, we've introduced stop so that you can have a good look at that application. Hopefully there's enough additional spaces there for the accountant, if you're preparing this, to be recording enough information to satisfy an audit and to enable you to think about some of these questions that the application form is asking you. And in all cases, we have got the link to the application form shown, which you can just click onto. And again, if you are a guest and you would like a copy of that checklist, just send an email to maya@essbiztools.com.au. Primary producers grants is the next area. Similar to the small business grants, they're not to compensate for loss of income. And assistance is available for eligible primary producers to assist with cleaning and restoration. The maximum grant is $25,000. Eligibility is important. This one here we're summarising is to Queensland, but it generally applies to the other states. The primary production enterprise must be located in the declared disaster area, and it must have suffered direct damage. Sorry, I went too fast. And the majority of the applicant's income has to be derived from primary production. Now, we did have a question before, and I think it was about primary production. I'm just getting the question. Now, it's not quite ready yet. I'll come back to that in a moment. The papers which we have on primary producers is listed there. I don't intend to call them up at this stage. They're the Victorian ones. Pardon me, they're the Victorian ones, which those of you who are based in Victoria, serving Victoria clients you'll be able to use. And as I indicated earlier, we're going to place these PowerPoint slides we're using for this webinar on the ESS BIZTOOLS website, and you'll be able to obtain them. The loans vary up to $250,000. In some states, they're not exactly loans. What they are is that the governments are subsidising interest of a rate of up to 4% on a loan of a maximum value of $150,000. So the maximum loans interest subsidy would be $6,000. And eligible applicants, pardon me, must be in working occupation of their property, and again, similar to the small businesses, must have used up their liquid assets and normal credit sources and considered to be viable. So there's some real judgments, questions to be answered there, and securities required for the loan. And we also have some material there on primary producers loans in New South Wales, and including the checklist. So we might just have a look at the checklist for New South Wales. There is the checklist, and again, if you require the checklist, if you send an email to Maya. The question that we received before, our client has a PP business, which I presume they mean it is meant to be primary production business, but has been doing consulting to supplement, had extensive damage to farm. The last financial year consulting income was $100,000 versus primary production income of $50,000. So won't pass eligibility test. Worth applying or not. The rules are talking about earning a majority of income from primary production, and obviously in this case the applicant would be earning more from than that from consulting income. But I think in these sort of cases it would be a good idea to consult whichever, and I'm not sure whether the questioner's from which state, to contact the applicable government agency in that state and run the case past them. The figures that you've included here are the previous financial year. If you looked at the current financial year, would that show any difference? But based on the facts you've got there, it would probably appear that they're not able to claim, but I think it's worth making an inquiry of the government agency. So hopefully that helps the questioner. We have produced a special Business Plus, which is our monthly newsletter, which I'll just bring up as I'm talking, to cover the situation from these natural disasters. We normally don't produce a Business Plus newsletter in January. We produce for the other 11 months in the year, and we have 2 additional publications in the month of May each year, one to cover the federal budget as affects SMEs, and the other is a end of financial year tax checklist. What our member subscribers do is they remove the reference there to ESS BIZTOOLS and put their own name and logo there, and we are inviting guests who are participating in this webinar, and indeed who have downloaded our material as part of our offer to supply these papers and additional material free of charge to accountants throughout Australia. We're encouraging you, or inviting you, probably a better way of putting it, to use this newsletter if you wish. The newsletter is written to go to clients. You can edit it. You can add additional material. But we have produced it. It's number 59. Obviously, that means we've produced it for quite some time now, 4.5 years, nearly 5 years. We've been producing these newsletters, basically normally on small business management operational issues. But this was such an important event that we thought we should produce a special newsletter. The one I'm showing you on the screen now is being edited in 10 minutes time to change a particular article which refers to the government's treatment of these grants, which I'm coming to in a moment, and also the disaster income recovery subsidy. The Assistant Treasurer announced earlier, or late last week, earlier this week, that these grants are now free of tax, and we have to just change what we have in the newsletter. That will get changed on our website, and you can download it and use it. So what the newsletter is doing is summarising for your SME clients what is the government's reaction on grants and loans. And in each article we do indicate that you have a paper available if you would like to send it to them, and as you have access to the papers, you can then put your name on them if you wish and send them to your clients. So we've then got grants, the primary producers. That's a brief summary of what I've gone through this morning. We've then introduced some other information relative to entities such as banks, where we're suggesting that if your clients are having difficulties in meeting any loan repayments or anything else to do with banks, they either talk to the bank direct or ask you to make representations to them. Some banks have made announcements that they're suspending repayments for up to 3 months. Others are accepting submissions on an individual basis. We then have comments on the small business loans and the loans to primary producers. Tax office assistance. The tax office has made some announcements. Probably the most significant one at this stage is that the monthly business activity statement that was due on the 21st of January has been extended for lodgement until the 21st of February. We had an article on taxation treatment of grants and loans, which, when it was written 2 weeks ago, indicated the law as it then existed, but as I said earlier, the Assistant Treasurer has now announced that the grants of up to $25,000 and the recovery subsidy payments will not be subject to tax. And we have a comment on insurance, particularly these ongoing dispute as to what really is the definition of flood. And we're suggesting that your clients should be following through on this and having discussions with their brokers, especially if they happen to be in areas that haven't been subjected to any of these disasters at this stage. I know that they won't be able to run around and get insurance cover. There's an article in the Townsville Bulletin this morning which some small businesses have been trying to get insurance cover for cyclones yesterday. Well, they had Buckley's chance, not with a cyclone announcement already having been made. So I'd be suggesting that you should be encouraging your clients to take good notice of what's happening, and if they need to review their insurance policies, they do so well before there's a natural disaster about to unfold. Our leadership consultant, Peter McDougall, ex-colonel in the Australian Army, Managing Director of the Leadership Academy, has written an article on testing time for leaders, which your clients hopefully will find of some benefit. And we have a full suite of papers on leadership written by Peter McDougall within ESS BIZTOOLS. Our new marketing manager, Maya, has produced an article looking at what happens post a disaster, which is also in the newsletter, Think Outside the Square. Take your team into your confidence in planning a business. And in this section, which is called Attention Accountants, we always list the material that's been referred to in one of our newsletters, Business Pluses, so that our accounting members can find that paper quickly if they have a client asking them for it. We have listed all of the special grant papers that we've written. There's 17 of them, which cover Australia. Obviously, you can merely include in your newsletter the papers for your state or the states that you're supplying professional services to. But we suggest you delete that before you send a newsletter to your clients, and replace it with your own message, which might be telling them what's happening in your office post the floods, or whatever else that you're doing at present. It might be you're going to run a seminar on these grants and loans that are available, or whatever else. You can include that in the newsletter. And the logo and advertisement at the end for ESS BIZTOOLS, we suggest that you delete and obviously put your name and logo into its place. If you wish to add some additional material, you can do so, and you can add to and send the additional material to your clients. So that's the overview of the government grant information. We will be publishing some information on our Facebook account about these grants and subsidies, and that's available through our website, www.essbiztools.com.au. We are running a further webinar on the products and services contained within ESS BIZTOOLS on the 23rd of February at 12 noon Queensland time, if any of you are interested. Is there any, I don't think there's any further questions that I've had come through. If you have any questions on any of these grants, please feel free to send us an email. To our guests who are participating in this webinar today, thank you very much for participating. If there's any additional information you require on ESS BIZTOOLS, please do not hesitate to contact us. We hope that the material which we're supplied will be of benefit to you in servicing your clients. And once again, we do convey to you and to any of your clients or friends who may have been affected by these floods and disasters our sincere sympathy and our best wishes for them in the future. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Goodbye. Thank you.